Upon a very close scrutiny of the alleged references to Muhammad in the Bible as a prophet, they absolutely have no relation to the prophet of Muhammad, nor prophesy his coming.
Muhammad is not mentioned in the Old Testament. Muhammad is not mentioned anywhere in Genesis or Revelation.
Muhammad is God's true messenger. That's a joke.
Lo, we inspire thee as we inspired Noah and the prophets after him, as we inspired Abraham and Ishmael and Isaac and Jacob and the tribes, and Jesus and Job and Jonah and Aaron and Solomon, and as we imparted unto David the Psalms.
The verse we've just heard is from chapter 4 of the Quran. In the verse, God is affirming to humanity that Muhammad is indeed the recipient of a divine guidance, just as Noah, Abraham, and the rest of the prophets. However, some Christians and Jews today don't believe that Muhammad was a prophet and the covenant that God made with Abraham. And since the Quran is not their book of authority, in this video I'm going to show you that the book you're holding in your hands contains the name off the seal of prophethood, the Prophet Muhammad. As known, the Old Testament was preserved in the Hebrew language. In the 5th chapter of the Shir HaShirim, which is one of the 5 Megillat or sacred scrolls that are part of the Hebrew Bible, or for short the Song of Solomon, as Christians know it today. That chapter is discussing someone. Jews will say it is discussing Solomon, while Christians will say it is discussing Jesus. Considering this is the Songs of Solomon, it would seem logical that it is discussing Solomon. The verses, describing this mystery man, have the narrator's speech conjugated in the feminine, meaning it is a woman who is describing this man. So it is possible that it is one of Solomon's wives discussing her husband Solomon. However, Christians assert that Jesus is being discussed, and that the chapter is describing a man who was not yet alive at that point. A prophecy. In reading the English translation of Song of Songs 5:16, it finishes the description by saying, "He is altogether lovely," but what most people don't know is that the name of that man was given in the original Megillat. Here is verse 16, and how it is written in ancient Hebrew, before introducing the vowels, in the 8th century. From the Hebrew Bible, on scripturetext.com. Here is the word in question. This word is made of 4 letters.
Mem, Het, Mem, Dalet.
Now when reading the word as it is written in its original form, with no vowels, it can be read as Muhammad, which is the name of the Muslim prophet, or as Mamad with no A after the H. According to Ben Yehuda's Hebrew English Dictionary, it is correctly pronounced as Muhammad, not Mamad. So how we're going to know for sure if it's pronounced as Muhammad, the Muslim prophet, or as Mamad, a random Hebrew word? The only way is to give the verse to a rabbi and say to him, "Please read." Here is the Song of Songs 5:16, and how it is read by a rabbi from a Hebrew Jewish site. Please notice, the im in Hebrew is a plural of respect.
חיכו ממתקים וכולו מחמדים, זה דודי וזה רעי בנות ירושלים. חיכו ממתקים וכולו מחמד, 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 מחמדים. זה דודי וזה רעי בנות ירושלים.
Coming out from the darkness, there are no other gods but God, and Muhammad is his messenger.
Let the world hear.
חיכו ממתקים וכולו מחמדים, זה דודי וזה רעי בנות ירושלים. חיכו ממתקים וכולו מחמד, 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 מחמדים, זה דודי וזה רעי בנות ירושלים.
Here is the famous SDL translation tool, which includes a professional human translation, as well as an online translation. We're going to copy our Hebrew word of the Song of Songs, directly from the Jewish site. It's the same site, where you can hear the rabbi reading the verse in Hebrew. All links are in the description, so, we're going to copy the word and paste it, and ask, please translate. Are they going to translate the meaning of the name of that person? As the Bible translators did. Which is the praised and the lovely one, or are they going to keep the name as it is? Well, see it yourself. Here is the World Lingo Translator. The result is the same. It's Muhammad.
We have no right. We have no right to translate names of people. Anybody. Your name should be retained. Mr. Black is Mr. Black, though he's white. You have no right to translate names of people. But they have been doing that. Muhammad ibn, they translated as altogether love. But the word Muhammad in the Hebrew language, the word Muhammad in the Hebrew language.
أعدائي لهيك التقليدية المعروفة ما عندنا مشكلة، مع جميع الاقتصادي تتفاعل إنه شيء عايشين.
When I was a Bible-believing evangelical Christian, attending Moody Bible Institute, before I began my serious scholarship on the New Testament, before I began to read it in Greek, and before I saw what serious scholars of the world had to say about it, I was absolutely convinced that the Gospels not only contained eyewitness tradition, but that they were written by two eyewitnesses, Matthew and John, and by two people who were close companions to people who were eyewitnesses, Mark and Luke. Intense research has a way of changing your mind about things. But I don't want you to think that this is a reason for you not to use your brain. Even if you are the most hardcore, Bible-believing evangelical on the planet, you surely think that God gave you a brain. Use your brain. Craig and I will agree on this. God gave you a brain to think with. Apply reason. That's why God made you a human being instead of a slug. Don't be afraid of using your intelligence to find out the truth. The truth may not be what you were taught, but if it's true, you should believe it, not run from it. As I studied more and more using my intelligence as an evangelical, but also praying about it, I became convinced that the New Testament Gospels were not written by eyewitnesses or by people who knew eyewitnesses. The first point to make is the rather obvious one that the Gospels don't claim to be written by eyewitnesses. They are all anonymous. The titles in your Gospels, the Gospel according to Matthew and so forth, were added by later editors. They were not put there by the original authors. Second point, none of the Gospels claims to be written by the person whose name it bears. They don't claim to be written by eyewitnesses, and they don't claim to be written by people named Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Those are later traditions that were added to the Gospels. These traditions do not start appearing for about 100 years. Some people think that there is an early church father named Papias who attests to the witness of Mark and Matthew, but in fact there are very solid reasons for thinking that Papias, who lived around the year 120 to 140, is not referring to our Mark or our Matthew. The first time anybody refers to Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John by name is Irenaeus in the year 180, 100 years after these books were written. My understanding of the Gospels as they've come down to us is that they were anonymous, and we don't know their names, and they're not built on eyewitness testimony. But the important point that I want to make is that even if the Gospels were written by eyewitnesses, or even if they did contain eyewitness accounts, that would not guarantee that they were accurate. Think about our legal system today. Are eyewitnesses always accurate in what they report? If so, why do we have trials that call in testimony more than one eyewitness? If eyewitnesses were always 100% accurate in what they report, we wouldn't need law courts. If we wanted to know what happened, we would simply ask somebody. Eyewitnesses do not always get all the information right. But even if they did, it wouldn't matter because the Gospels of the New Testament don't claim to be written by eyewitnesses, and in fact they were not written by eyewitnesses. The Gospel writers were living 40 to 50 to 60 years after Jesus died. They wrote the Gospels in Greek. Jesus' language was Aramaic. These Gospel writers were living in a different country. Decades later, where did they get their information from? They were not the followers of Jesus. They don't claim to be followers of Jesus, the disciples. They're written by later people decades later in a different language. Where did they get their information from? They heard stories about Jesus that had been in circulation year after year after year, decade after decade, down to the time that the gospel writers living in a different country, speaking a different language, heard the stories. What happens to oral stories when they are transmitted orally? They change. The gospel writers have discrepancies among themselves because the stories that were told and retold were changed over time, And the gospel writers themselves sometimes change the stories. That's why there are discrepancies. That's why scholars might be able to tell you generally what Jesus was about. They can list 8 things that Jesus did, but they can't tell you the details and agree. Why can't scholars agree? Because there are so many discrepancies that the Gospels are not reliable.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
وإذ قال الله يا عيسى ابن مريم أأنت قلت للناس اتخذوني وأمي إلهين من دون الله قال سبحانك ما يكون لي أن أقول ما ليس لي بحق إن كنت قلته فقد علمته تعلم ما في نفسي ولا أعلم ما في نفسك إنك أنت علام الغيوب ما قلت لهم إلا ما أمرتني به أن اعبدوا الله ربي وربكم وكنت عليهم شهيدا ما دمت فيهم فلما توفيتني كنت أنت الرقيب عليهم وأنت على كل شيء شهيد.
تعرفونه ليس كل من يقول لي يا رب يا رب يدخل ملكوت السماوات بل الذي يفعل إرادة أبي الذي في السماوات. كثيرون سيقولون لي في ذلك اليوم يا رب يا رب أليس باسمك تنبأنا وباسمك أخرجنا شياطين وباسمك صنعنا قوات كثيرة؟ فحينئذ أصرح لهم إني لم أعرفكم قط اذهبوا عني يا فاعلي الإثم